All right, folks. The draft is only 3 weeks away. A lot of big moves have happened so far, and Stephon Diggs goes to the Houston Texans, and Derrick Brown re-signs for the Panthers. We're going to talk about all about this on the second episode of the Football's Junkies podcast. I'm your host, Mikhail. Let's go. All right, folks. This is the part of free agency that nobody really likes because guess what? Not a lot of things happen. You may hear this person might get signed, that person might get signed, this small player went to this team went to that team, this person retires, this person is, unhappy with the team, this person's in contract negotiations. It's really slow. Don't like it. Me personally, I hate it. I really do. It's not, after that first week of free agency, it's just like, yo, what is going on? Like, is somebody going to make a move? Now, you may hear, this person may say, oh, there's a rumor going around that, this person might not be happy or there might be a big splash trade that's about to happen soon. But it's like, you really don't know because there's really no breadcrumbs to really, look at and say, there might be something there. But this is the week where we've had a little bit of motion, folks. Just enough for we to talk about. Stephon Diggs got traded from the Buffalo Bills to the Texans. Now, let's go over the... I can't believe I'm actually saying this. This actually happened. I am so surprised. So, in doing so, with him getting traded to the Texans received Stephon Diggs and a 2024 sixth and a 2025 fifth round pick, while the Bills receive a 2025 second round pick. Now, we're going to have to decipher this like a surgeon. So let's go into it. So, on one hand, you have the Bills who were at a crossroads where they were just done with Stephon Diggs as the person. And the reason why I say that is because when you have someone like a Stephon Diggs who multiple times have voiced his displeasure about the team and how things are going on and maybe how he's being utilized, it puts you at a point to where you don't want to deal with the player. Granted, he may be the reason why, more people are coming to the games or more of a reason why you guys are winning games, but it gets to a point where it's just time to go. It's just time to go, your separate ways. And, they were willing to now take on the biggest dead cap hit for a non-quarterback in NFL history. They are taking over a $30+ million dead cap hit from this move. Now, to some people, you're probably wondering, how are they going to be able to manage this? Well, there's a few ways that they can go about it. They can either try to see if they can spread it out within the next few years, which will lower the dead cap even more, or they can all just, take it on the chin, take it, this year, and then, the next few years, they really have to worry about it. There are so many different ways that they can do about it, and they probably will. Now, on the other hand, this affects Josh Allen even more simply because he doesn't have a receiver that he has chemistry in the room anymore. He doesn't. The Bills went after and they signed Mac Hollins, Curtis Samuel, and probably two or three other receivers that are probably going to compete for a roster spot. Which honestly, that's not good enough. It's just not. In the division and the conference that you play in, you have to have a number one receiver. If you don't have a number one receiver, you are not going to be successful. You're just not. And it doesn't help that, Josh Allen, since the departure of Brian Dable, he has sort of regressed a little bit. And in doing so, he's having to put his body out more just to extend the play, get a first down, score a touchdown, whatever the case may be, which, he may not feel it right now, but he's going to feel it in maybe about 2 or 3 years. And this is something that I have argued, with my friends as well. These bigger quarterbacks, your Josh Allens, your Big Bens, your Cam Newtons, your Andrew Lucks, those type of quarterbacks at first, when they make these great moves and great plays and whatnot, it's great at first. But once they hit a certain threshold, they can't do those type of moves anymore Because why? They've been punished so much. I'm gonna put it to you like this: Andrew Luck, a great quarterback. He alone was put into a very bad situation, and I say it because he was getting punished every single game. Every single game, he was getting punished. Him, Big Ben, Cam Newton, they were getting punished because at that time, the league wasn't the league rules for quarterbacks wasn't as strong as it is now, where you can't even breathe on a quarterback now without getting a roughing the passer call. Back then, you could basically close. You could still hit a quarterback pretty good, and you wouldn't get a call for it. It's just football. And so what you saw was players like Big Ben who, their career was cut short. Andrew Luck's career was over because he didn't want to take any more punishment. There were literally reports that were coming out. I forgot exactly what game it was, but I'll probably have to find it. There was literally games where Andrew Luck was so hurt that he was basically pissing out blood. That's not good. I'm not a doctor, never been a doctor, never went to medical school or anything. But anytime you have a quarterback who is pissing out blood, that is not good. That means you are taking a tremendous amount of punishment. And he was basically taking this punishment, season after season after season. And mind you, he was doing this on a team where they didn't have a whole lot of weapons, let alone they didn't have adequate protection. And so I say all that to say this with Josh Allen. You have to make sure that he is going to be okay. Because unless you guys are about to do something, crazy within the draft, you guys might try to trade up and maybe try to get a receiver or, try to make another big splash play, you're going to have to do something for Josh Allen. Because what you have right now in that offense is not going to win you games, let alone get you a Super Bowl, which that's a whole nother topic in itself. I mean, sure, you could rely on, Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox and, and this subpar to mediocre run game that you guys have, which you really don't have. But that's another topic for another day. But that's not going to win you games. What's going to win you games is Josh Allen risking his body once again, game after game, season after season, to keep you close in the game. And that's not gonna last long. It's just not. On top of that, you also have to factor in that the Bills did not and have not done a great job in trying to retool and replace adequate talent on the team. May I remind you, folks, that this offseason alone, the Bills had to let go a lot of their key players simply because that they were over the cap. Just over the cap. Not because of age, not because of where they are in their career, none of that. Just because they were over the cap. Leonard Floyd walked, Gabe Davis walked, both of their safeties walked, and even Tre'Davious White walked. That's not good. And so what you're seeing now is the team itself has regressed tremendously. Are they still a playoff team? Possibly. If they probably, hit on the draft and maybe probably, do something, before they get deep into the season, possibly, yes. But to say that, they are this bona fide team that could potentially go to the Super Bowl, I don't see it. I simply don't see it, simply because they still have too many holes on both sides of the ball, and they just wasn't prepared for this moment. They tried to do what the Rams tried to do, but the problem was you did it the wrong way. This is the same Bills team who literally paid Von Miller this huge deal for no reason. And in doing so, with you paying him that large deal, you are basically handcuffing yourself to him for a very long time. Even though that you have restructured, that's still not good enough. Because guess what? You haven't replaced Tremaine Edmonds. You haven't replaced both your safeties. You haven't replaced Tre'Davious White. You don't have replacements for any of those players. And then let's not even talk about the offense. You don't even have a run game. You don't even have a run game. That's not good enough. In the AFC, if you're an AFC team, you have to have a run game. Now, I'm not saying your run game has to be top five, the best, or, top 10 or whatever, but it has to be a decent run game where, it can get you a pivotal first down. It can get you close into the red zone. Hell, it can even get you a touchdown. You have to have that. And if you don't have that, well, then guess what? You're just not going to win games. You're just not. I'm sorry. Now, for the Texans, this is great for them because why? This adds another tool for CJ Stroud. Folks, I'm going to say this right now. The Texans is a very dangerous team. They are a very dangerous team simply because they have a lot of firepower on both sides of the ball. And they have a very high draft pick. I'm telling you right now, if they go for a defensive player, which I possibly think they probably would because they do have more holes on the defense than they do on the offense, I'm telling you, right now they are the best team in their division. I could probably make a strong case that they are top 5 in the AFC right now. I could simply say that simply because of how well that they have structured this team. And not to mention, they have, with this trade, they have voided the last 3 years of STEFON Diggs' of his contract, which would basically make him a free agent once the season is over, while at the same time moving, $3.5 million that he would have gotten next year to this year, which then would boost up his guarantee money to $22.252 million, which, it's still a great payday. But at the same time, this basically puts him in a situation where, okay, once the season is over with, either you could stay with the Texans or you can try free agency again and, see what happens. Who knows? Right now, it's looking very dangerous for the Texans because now they have a receiving core where you have John Mitchell III, Noah Brown, Tank Dell, STEFON Diggs, and Nico Collins. And you traded for Joe Mixon. That's dangerous. That is a high caliber, high firepower offense that you won't be able to stop. And on top of that, you got CJ Stroud. So, not trying to gaslight CJ Stroud, not trying to hype him up or anything, but on paper, this is a very dangerous offense. A very dangerous offense in a division where the division isn't that strong. Where you can easily steamroll the Titans because they're still rebuilding. You can you're sort of going to be at odds with the Colts and possibly the Jaguars, but not as much as what people think it is. So we'll see how the season goes, and then we'll just go from there. Now, fast forward to the breaking news that just broke before we recorded this episode. Derrick Brown, defensive tackle for the Carolina Panthers, has signed a 4-year, $96 million deal with $63.1 million guaranteed, which rounds about, according to the numbers, $24 million a year. That's about the average, which makes him the 5th highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL right now. I'm going to try to be as humble as I possibly can with this very quick rant. Why in the world are the Panthers paying Derrick Brown all this money, but they didn't? But they wasn't able to try to pay Brian Burns some money. Now, granted, I understand. GMs value certain positions more than others. I get that. That's perfectly fine. But Brian Burns, if I'm not mistaken, has been a very, 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 very effective player compared to what Derrick Brown has been. I'm going to read you the stats for Derrick Brown, okay? This season and then probably the last few seasons that Derrick Brown has played. In the 2023 season, Derrick Brown had 2 sacks, 57 solo tackles, 1 interception, okay? Now, when you look at it, since he's gotten into the league in 2020, the most sacks that he's had is 3. the most, total tackles that he's had, which was this past season, which was 103. Okay, cool, perfectly fine. Going over to Brian Burns. Okay, Brian Burns in 2023 had 32 solo tackles, 8 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Okay, cool. In 2019, his first year, his rookie year, he had 7.5 sacks. In 2022, he had 12.5 sacks. In 2020 and 2021, he had 9 sacks. What are we talking about here, folks? That is, it shows how dysfunctional and how the team does not value someone like a Brian Burns. And I say that because instead of you at least trading him away, because during last season, the Rams were, they had a trade package available, and they really wanted Brian Burns, but the Panthers said no. So when the news broke, I was definitely thinking, oh, okay, the Panthers are going to try to, do right by Brian Burns and they're going to pay him. No, they didn't. They didn't pay him. And instead, what they did was they basically traded him to the Giants. The Giants, New York Giants, and they paid him. So it's not like the Panthers are in a situation where, they have all these big contracts and, they got to take care of this person and that person and all, and, these 3 players and this and that. No, they don't. They don't have any big contracts. They don't. So why in the world couldn't you try to lock up both Brian Burns and Derrick Brown? Brian Burns should have been the priority first. He should have been. Derrick Brown, hey, you get in where you fit in, kid. I'm trying to find the words. I'm trying to stay positive in this situation. But again, this goes back to what I said in the first episode. Pay the player who is the most who has the most presence on the field. If Brian Burns is creating the most pressure and offenses are targeting him more, then that is the person that you need to take care of. Simple as that. Now, it's one thing if Brian Burns said, I want to be making, 30 million a year, or, I want to be making 40 million a year, a crazy number, okay? Then it's like, okay, you're bugging right now. We'll just let you walk and let somebody else try to pay you that. But I guarantee you, if you probably had a simple conversation with him, he'll probably say, I didn't want a whole lot of money. I just want to get paid. I just want to get paid for what I did on the field. And the Panthers were unable to do so. And this continues to show why the Panthers are a very dysfunctional organization. From the front office to ownership to coaching to every single level you could possibly think of. It is a very dysfunctional organization, and it will continue to be a very dysfunctional organization. But I'm done talking about the Panthers because the Panthers are trash. Let's talk about mock drafts. Let's talk about the draft because that's what we really care about, right? So I've been looking at a lot of mock drafts lately, which a lot of them are starting to be more consistent. Some of them are still a little bit more outlandish than others. Don't really care about those. We care about the main ones from, the main insiders. So a lot of them, of course, all of them are going to have Caleb Williams going number 1, which we all universally knows Caleb Williams is going to be drafted by the Chicago Bears. Now, when it gets to the 2nd and 3rd and 4th picks, that's where things get a little bit rocky because there's a little bit of inconsistency there. I've seen some mock drafts having, Jaden Daniels get drafted to the Commanders. I've seen Drake May go to the Commanders. I've seen Jaden Daniels drop down a little bit. I've seen Drake May go up a little bit. I've even started to see J.J. McCarthy recently starting to climb up a little bit more in that top 5 range. And the only reason why I say that is because I think teams are starting to value what J.J. McCarthy can bring to a team. J.J. McCarthy is a true leader. He's a leader. His skill set is very, is very intact. There's not a lot of red flags to his game. And I think he's someone that you can instantly start him week one. And you can probably, really see something. You can really see some flashes with him compared to someone like a Drake May, someone like a Jaden Daniels and whatnot. The problem is with a lot of these quarterbacks is, and this will probably be an episode that I'll probably have to really get into, is that a lot of the expectation for a lot of these players is they have to be instant starters. They have to be instant stars overnight, and it doesn't work like that. Some of them may take a little bit longer than others, and so the problem with the top five picks is they can go any way. Because of course, they're always going to say, we're open to trading down, for the right price, just throwing out a whole bunch of smoke screens while at the same time entertaining and seeing, okay, who would be willing to give up the most, just to get this spot. Because whether we want to admit it or not, the top five range is a very lucrative, position for teams that might be lower in the draft who have a very bigger need than what the teams in the top five have. So, for instance, the Arizona Cardinals, right? The Arizona Cardinals, they have a top five pick. But what they could do and what they should do, as I'm putting on my GM hat once again, they should trade down. They should trade down a little bit more. And I say that because from a roster standpoint, they're not in a position right now where they can be competitive within their own division. And that they have so many holes on both sides of the team that at this point, the rebuild that they're going through, right now, it's going to take them about 2 or 3 draft cycles to really get things going. So why not start the process now by just trading down? Because most likely you'll get another first round pick for next year. And then you'll probably get some more picks as well. And I would just maybe if teams are are more willing to do so, keep trading down. And I say that because when you're a team that is really going through what the Cardinals are going through, and they really don't have a whole lot, and they have a lot of needs, sometimes it's just best to just entertain, see what happens. If nobody is really giving you what you're really looking for, then okay, make a pick and just go on from there. But that's just me personally. You have other teams like the Chargers who, yes, they have a high pick, and yes, they have a few needs, but at the same time, they could probably entertain the idea of also trading down as well. So the draft, honestly speaking, it's going to be crazy. It is. Because you have a team like the Vikings who they are very desperate in finding a quarterback. Even though they signed Sam Darnold, that doesn't instantly mean that, okay, he's the quarterback. No. They want their quarterback for the future. And they believe that their quarterback, who I also believe with him as well, is either going to be Michael Penix or J.J. McCarthy. One of the two. One of those two quarterbacks is going to fall to the Vikings. One of those two. And even then, I've even started to see some mock drafts where Michael Penix doesn't get drafted in the first round. He actually falls out the first round. And I've seen some where he gets drafted in the second round. I've seen some where he's even gotten drafted in the third round. This is what I'll say. Michael Penix is a great quarterback prospect. He ran a good 40 time and everything. However, I think what's making teams very, weary about possibly drafting him high in the first round is because his extensive injury history when he was in Indiana, as well as just his performance in the national championship. Because let's call it for what it is. Had Michael Penix won the national championship against Michigan, we would be talking about him more and in a much positive light than what people are talking about him right now. And so teams are valuing, okay, is it because of the situation that he was in, or is it because of, X, Y, and Z? So you just have to factor in a lot of those different things. Now, me personally, do I think Michael Penix potentially is a first round pick? I don't know. I don't know. I think he is a player where he has to be put into the right situation. I really do. Michael Penix has to be drafted by an offensive coach. He has to. He has to be drafted by an offensive coach. And I only say that because the problem with defensive coaches is they don't, of course, they're not going to value, um, offensive pieces as much. And sometimes they may neglect the quarterback. And sometimes when they do, the quarterback regresses. Now, of course, you're going to have, your outliers, your Tom Brady's, your Ben Roethlisberger's, your Russell Wilson's and whatnot. But even then, at some point in their careers, there was a point where they didn't, they may were unable to get, certain weapons, or, their offense started to regress a little bit more, and in doing so, their play regressed. So there's so many different things that you have to factor in with someone like a Michael Penix. And I think we also have to tack on, and I briefly talked about it, his injury history. I think the injury history alone is making a lot of people very wary, just about him, simply because he's been hurt a lot. He is. He's been hurt a lot, and I think that makes teams a little bit concerned, to the point where they may not be open to wanting to go after him. But we'll see what happens. We'll definitely see what happens. I'm very optimistic for Michael Penix, and honestly, all of the quarterbacks, the top quarterbacks, not all the quarterbacks, but for the top quarterbacks, I'm very optimistic for them, except for Caleb Williams. But that's going to be another episode that we're going to have to talk about, because I just don't see it. I don't see it with Caleb Williams. I don't know what we're talking about. I just don't see it. I really do not see it with Caleb Williams. All right, folks. Well, I decided to do something a little bit different, and I'm probably going to do this for the up until the draft. I'm going to try to pick a different team. So comment down below what's your favorite team, and I'll do a mock draft simulator for them. So I decided to do, of course, Pittsburgh Steelers, because why? I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And so I did two different versions. I did a traditional one, and I did one where I was, when I was making a couple trades. So with the traditional one, the 20th pick, first round pick, I chose Nate Wiggins. The second pick, I chose offensive tackle, Roger Rosenstein, tackle from Washington. Third pick, I chose Xavier Legette, wide receiver, South Carolina. Then with the fourth pick, I chose Kyrie Jackson, corner from Oregon. I chose Jaden Hicks, safety, Washington State. Torrey Taylor, punter, Iowa. Joe Milton, the third, quarterback. And finished it off with a center, Kingsley Yukon from Florida. Now, this is what the reason why I decided to do this experiment is because I wanted to see exactly how would the draft play out if the Steelers were to not to make any trades and not try to trade up in the draft to try to acquire somebody. And it actually worked. However, the problem was when I decided to do this, once it got time for me to draft, all the good tackles, all the good right tackles were gone. They had all been drafted. And so what you were stuck with really wasn't, it was sort of the second tier right tackles, which even then, they're still good as well, but it's those first tier right tackles, the Talois Fuagas, the JC Lathams, that are just like, oh man, you want those guys. Those guys are movers. Those guys are maulers, because there's so much uncertainty with Ryan Ramczyk's knee that I think the Saints can't They can't take that risk. So I think they'll just draft one. And that's perfectly fine. But if you're a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're going to need to trade up. You're going to need to. You're going to need to trade up, and you're going to need to get a right tackle. You have to. You have to get a right tackle, because if you don't, and if you wait later into the draft, you're going to be in a situation where you're not going to have a right tackle who you can just plug and play. You're not. You're going to have a right tackle who it's going to take them a while to be pushed into the starting lineup, which you don't want, because you need an instant starter for a right tackle right now as we speak. So there's that. And then for the second mock draft, which it was a little weird, but we'll go over it. So with, again, first round pick J.C. Latham. Second pick I chose center Cedric Van Pran from Georgia. Third pick I chose Jalen McMillan, receiver from Washington. With the fourth pick I chose Kyrie Jackson again, cornerback from Oregon. And with the final pick I chose Tyke Smith, safety from Georgia. Now, even with this one, I like this one a little bit more than the first one. And the reason why I say that is because you're addressing your three most important needs in the first 3 rounds. You're getting your your starting right tackle. You're getting your center who, he could start, but at the same time, it'll be best if you just maybe sit under a starting center, hopefully praying to God that we sign one, but who knows, that's another story for another day, but we're not going to get into it. I'm not going to rant about my Steelers. So you address both offensive line needs, which is great. Awesome. Amazing. While at the same time, you're also drafting a receiver, because let's be real here, we have been hitting on receivers. And if you don't believe me, check the history books. Check the history books, folks. Yes, I'm saying it. Check the history books. This person, Antonio Brown, 84. You know what I mean? But I told myself I wasn't going to do it, but I did it. Dang it. And then you also draft Kyrie Jackson, who is a bigger body corner, which, that's what you need. And then you also draft Tyke Smith, who is a dog of a safety. You want to talk about somebody who has a dog mentality? He has a dog mentality. He wants to go and either he wants to hit you, tackle you, stop you, whatever the case may be. Once he got his eyes locked on you, he's going in for the kill, folks. That's who he is. And so I say all that to say this. Just because, you may look at a mock draft, and the mock draft, might have something crazy. It'll be like, Michael Penix might get drafted to the Raiders, or, the first round there won't be any right tackles taken, or whatever the case may be. Don't believe it. No. Half of the teams between the 10 to 20th-ish point of the draft, they all need an offensive lineman at some point. Now, it doesn't necessarily all have to be right tackles, but they do need, could be a guard, could be a center, could be a left tackle, could be right tackle, whatever the case may be. They all need offensive linemen. You can never have enough offensive linemen. You just can't. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what any analyst says, foreign player says. You can never have offensive linemen simply because, they can go down in an instant. And it's not like a receiver or a running back where, they can still play through it. Certain injuries that an offensive lineman, suffers, they may not be able to play through. Or it might be, season ending, or you might be in a situation like a Ryan Ramczyk, who he suffers a major injury and, he may not be able to play anymore. So you always have to value in those type of things. But I'm going to end the episode right here. Thank you guys as always. The podcast is now available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the major places where you can listen to podcasts to. All you have to type in is Football Junkies Podcast. Like it, leave a 5-star review, leave a comment under it. You can follow you can follow us on Instagram. Yep, that's right. We have Instagram, folks, at football underscore junkies pod. Again, that's football underscore junkies pod. There's a link tree on there for all the other links of where you might be able to find us. I thank you guys so much. We're gonna probably do more drafting type episodes leading up to the draft, and then we're gonna try to do something special on the night of the draft. Can't tell you guys yet because then I'll ruin the surprise. We might have a special guest for the next episode. Who knows? Won't reveal it right now, but who knows? Stay tuned. Love you guys.